And we're live with the one and only Dr. John Rusin. How you doing?
I'm good, gentlemen. I'm good. Glad to be here.
What's we were kind of talking before the start of the recording just about, how we got to plug along and try to focus on the things that we can control. Difficult to think about during these current times, but it's definitely a necessity.
It is. It's the only thing that you can do right now. Well, one other thing you can do is turn the fucking news off, get in the gym, stay active, don't eat pure shit, and hopefully we can get out of this shitstorm that we're currently in. But a lot of this stuff is out of our control, so you have to protect your positivity, pay it forward to whoever you're around, whether that's your family, whether that's your clients, whether that's your community, and hopefully we can figure some things out as we move forward in the next couple of weeks, couple of months, hopefully not a couple of years.
So, John, you being a huge leader in the fitness industry, and just hearing what you're saying right now, I love the energy. I love the positivity of it. And what are some of the things that you're doing right now that you've had to adapt or shift differently to be able to keep moving forward and just take your mind off all that crap and just really hone in on what's most important?
I think moving forward is a relative term right now because the facts of the matter are that we've all taken about 25 steps backwards in our personal lives, in our professional lives, our businesses. There's nothing really great happening socially when you're in your house for 100 straight days with your wife and two kids under 10 years old. There's not a whole lot of quality bonding time happening, but it's pure survival mode. I think one of the things after I started pouting around for 5 to 7 days like everyone else did when we got locked down was, you know what, I'm going to try to make the most of this. I'm going to try to work as hard as I possibly can and try to find those silver linings a little bit. And for me, that's been being home in the same spot for 3.5 straight months now. This is as long as I've been in Madison, Wisconsin, consecutively in 4.5 years. So that's a lot different of a lifestyle that we're living. And I made it a point to, hey, I'm going to train 60 minutes every single day. I'm going to make it the best part of my day. And I'm going to make sure my energy is up for my family. I'm going to make sure my energy is up for our 27 coaches at the Pain-Free Performance Specialist certification. And of course, my staff here, because when you are thrown into challenges and situations like this, it's not about you. You are the culmination of everyone around you. And if you're in a leadership position, you must lead your team. You must lead your people. You must lead your clients, lead your family. And I think that protecting my own positivity and making sure that I fueled up on good food, that I slept correctly even when I was stressed the hell out, and I got my training in because I do love to train, never miss a day. Those were things that I did for me, but then it paid off dividends for all the people around me. I know it seems very simple, but without training, without eating well, without sleeping, and trying to de-stress the situation, which we're all currently in, I don't know if I'd be here on this podcast today.
Well, I think that's a really good point that you brought up. You've probably heard it 100 times. We hear it all the time, from our clients who travel a lot as well. They don't necessarily make that time or set that time aside for themselves because they think oh, if I set aside 60 minutes or 90 minutes or, however long that they have, I'm going to be taking away from the other people that I'm surrounded by that count on me, when in reality, you taking that 60 or 90 minutes, or even if it's 30 minutes, you taking that time for yourself is going to then, help everyone around you tenfold, so it's kind of that, contradiction that people have in their own head. And it happens a lot in health and fitness, right? With diet, with exercise in general, where people are saying oh, well, if I take this time for me, then I'm taking time away from other people. It's well, not really, you're actually going to be able to give a lot more back than you think.
It's like me and Josh sometimes say, you got to be a little selfish in that, not in that looking at it in a good way to be selfless later on, because, if you're not being the most optimal you can, then how are you going to be able to show up every day for, your family, your coaches, like you said, your business, your friends? You just can't, so it's something we always talk about.
It's been very sobering for me because I have a lot of people that depend on me and our businesses that we run. I'm an owner of 4 businesses. We have an extraordinary amount of employees and clients that we work with. And when push comes to shove, it's like the leader of that business, the executive of the businesses, everyone depends on you for their next dollar. If they work for you, they depend on you for their positivity and their health and wellness, where health and wellness has never been more important than today, as it's a protective mechanism against disease that is running rampant across the world. So I think there's a lot on leaders out there in the industry today, but it is too simple to give up your own best practices and become a less optimal version of yourself because you're trying to do too much. What I learned is if you can take care of yourself, it means that when you're on point with your coaches, with your clients, whoever it may be, your family, your kids, then you're truly present and there, and you can really give them a higher level of yourself. You know, when you eat like shit, when you sleep like shit, when you don't train, you're simply a less optimal version of yourself. And I don't think that's anyone's goal out there. It's like, oh yeah, I used to be awesome when I slept 8 hours a night. Now I sleep 6 and I'm a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Nobody's goal is to be a worse version of yourself. The goal is to be the best version of yourself. Nobody wants to be around you at 5 out of 10. That's for damn sure.
So I love everything you're saying, man. Like spot on, dude. So how do you grab that, and how do you move that into your coaches? Like, what do you do with your coaches? Like, do you pass on this leadership? Do you pass on this advice, this information? Like, how do you go about that? Because, you know, everything you're saying, like, you know, you're obviously a success story, and what you do is amazing. So I would love to hear that. Like, you as a leader, like, what do you do with your team?
Yeah, so I have 2 teams. I have one remote team for the certification course, and then I also have a team here in Madison that work out of Wisconsin. And they're 2 different strategies because you have a lot of face-to-face time with my team in Madison here, and you don't have a whole lot of face-to-face time when you have people on 4 different continents running certification courses. So starting here at Madison, one thing that is a non-negotiable part of being on the drjohnrusin.com team is that we train every single day at 9 a.m. until 10:15 a.m., and that is part of our day. Because I know that if we can get in, and the first thing that we do is we train hard, we have fun, we make cool videos, and we do everything in the real time, and it builds that camaraderie. There's nothing like that. Now, it's not just about a brothership. It's about a connection between doing what we're there to do, what we love to do, what we're professionals in doing, which is coaching and training. So I think that it all starts there. And that's been something that I've done for years, if not a decade at this point in time. But if you're a team member, you're going to train with us, and we're all going to become stronger because of that connection that we have. You know, that really sets the tone for our days. And we do work 6 to 7 days a week. It's not this 9 to 5 job that you show up Monday through Friday. We're doing a lot of the day. So we make sure to get that in because we know the rest of the day, it's going to be flooded full of challenges. It's going to be flooded full of hard work, some creative work as well. But I think that just sets the tone. And there's something to be said about the metaphor of training into business or even into life. You know, the way that you train, the passion that you bring, that's what you want to be bringing to your clients. That's what you want to be bringing to the educational systems. And I think that it's very, very clear that you can do it and you can hone this skill in the gym and then transfer it almost instantaneously 15 minutes later into a business-based setting where we continue to work. So that has been a simple thing that has worked extraordinarily well. And it almost builds up the camaraderie and it builds the energy around what we do with the general tenet of we practice what we preach. We are testing all of our clients' programs. We are making all the mistakes before we hand them out to them. But we just love to do it. And if it's a cornerstone part of our life, our big message is making it a cornerstone part of our clients' lives and making sure that we're actually setting that good example. That's the thing I love most about social media is that we put all these videos out just from our normal training. It's not like we're setting up tripods and stuff to fake out these Instagram videos so we can post them. It's literally like, oh, guys, let's shoot our last set of squats here. And it happens to be the coolest looking one. And then we post it. It's almost like a bird's eye view into what we do on a daily basis. And the energy is high. You know, people are yelling and screaming and high-fiving and stuff. And I think that is a really good depiction of the entire way that we run the business. You know, it's a fun, dynamic atmosphere. We work extremely hard. We try to be innovative, but we also grind it out when we need to grind it out.
Yeah, there's that old saying, you know, like the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. You know, so if you really set that intention to the way you train, to the way that you know, take care of your diet, it definitely correlates into how you run your business or how you handle, you know, your career, whatever it may be. We talk about it all the time, you know, like people always ask us like, oh, well, you know, when you're on the podcast, like, do you guys only talk about health and fitness? And we're like, well, no, not really, because we truly believe that it does, you know, transfer over into like a vast majority of all the other things that we're doing.
That's a really good point. And that's something that I think more and more about as I get older and as I get a little bit more wise in coaching our clients and making these training programs and all of this. You know, I look at myself as an avatar over COVID. Was I training to be like, yo, I just set this PR on my deadlift? I didn't give a fuck at that point. Was I training to get super shredded? No, I didn't care about that. Was I training to make sure that my metabolic capacity was at optimal levels? No, I didn't care about that. Why was I training for 60 minutes a day? I was training because I depended on that for everything else in my life. And that was a really big shifting point for me mentally, and especially trying to teach this tenet into our systems and our team, was that we're training to make every aspect of our life better. And if your training is taking away from any aspect of your life in terms of the quality of life that you're living, then you are less than optimal. And most likely you are not going to be sustainable with that physical practice or that dietary practice for that matter. So when you look at it, it's like at the end of the day, at the end of the week, end of a month, end of a training program, are you living a higher level life because of what you're doing in the gym? If you're not, you have some hard questions to ask yourself in the mirror, because that is not going to be a great long-term approach to health, wellness, longevity, performance, whatever your goal may be. It has to be something that makes you a better father. It makes you a better husband. It makes you a better business owner. It makes you a better friend. Just a better person to be around. Is that what your training is doing for you? And if it's not, you have to ask yourself the tough questions: is what could I get a better return on my time investment, my energy investment, my sweat dollar on? I know the sweat is part of this podcast. You got to think about that stuff.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's hard to do because we just like grinding it out and just acting like we're always making everything better, even though we can't walk down the stairs and you can't play with your son at the park because you blew your back out on the deadlift earlier today. You know, that's not what health and fitness is all about.
Yeah. I always, you know, my clients, I had a conversation with one of my female clients this morning, and, you know, she said like, oh, I feel, you know, better than I ever have, but it doesn't really feel like we're doing like a ton. Like I always felt like I did so much more at Barry's. And I'm like, well, it's not about the volume of work that you're doing if you're getting the right type of work in. You know, I mean, volume is important over time, but in terms of making sure that you're taking the right approach to, like you said, how you're going to become more optimal in that day and that week and that training block, you know, that's what's most important, not the time limit that you said, or, you know, the amount of like going ham that you had, you know, in that session. It's more about like, okay, well, did the work elicit the benefit that you're trying to get out of it?
And I think it's amazing because all this information is just going to be so crucial for our listeners, because I'm a big believer in that too. And it's something I always tell my clients. It's like, you have to look at life. It's like we're playing the game of life, and we have barriers, we have obstacles, we have family, we have friends, like you said. And it's like, that's the reason why, like, you have to show up to all of this. That's the game of life. And it's like, I told them, I want you guys to be the best performers and athletes for the game of life. You know, and it's everything that you said. So I'm a true believer on that, and I love that because I just feel more people need to hear that, you know, and approach it that way.
One of the biggest roadblocks we had is what Josh mentioned. It's like, hey, we think that if we sweat more, if we get our heart rate up, if we puke in the bucket, if we burn 1,500 calories on a fucking watch that tells us that we had a good workout, then that is going to somehow magically make us better. Many times, that's what leads to the pigeonholes in our physical culture. Burnouts, injuries, and hard times with sustainability and consistency of a physical practice. It's not that people don't want to work hard. It's not that people only want to work hard. It's that we don't have a sustainable way to do it intelligently, so we actually get benefits from the energy and the money and the time that we spend doing this stuff. But there's something sexy about like, yo, I just killed myself today in this class. 45 minutes, I thought I was going to throw up the entire time. There's something liberating about that mentally. It's like, I just fucking conquered that shit. But as every intelligent coach knows, there's a way to make your client feel like that without breaking them down, without getting them injured, making sure that they can come back to the gym in 48 hours and do it again. And that is the art of coaching. That's the art of programming, and just being a real live human that also deals with some of these issues, as Anthony just said. We're not just all about the gym. We're not pro athletes here. Many of our clients, they're business people, they're family men and women. They have other obligations in life. And one of the biggest mistakes that coaches make is thinking that everyone's super into training and nutrition and health and wellness at the same level you are. You know, most likely they're into whatever their shit is. And using fitness as a medium to make that shit better, that's why they hired you and that's why they're paying you money. If they were so into fitness and training, they would probably be in your shoes. They would be a trainer themselves, but they're not. So we have to realize that not every client is going to be the same as you, mentally, emotionally, and psychologically ready for some sort of huge behavior change. Many people just want to get incrementally better, and their key performance indicators may be different than what yours are. It may not be a deadlift for them. It may be, hey, I have more energy on the weekends with my kids, and I don't have to go in and drink that fourth cup of coffee at 4 p.m. to get through. There's all these different factors, but the art of communication and coaching, that's what people are paying you for.
Now, would you say when you first have these initial conversations with your clientele, whether it be online or in person, and you start discussing all these different things that really display progress, right? Most people just think like the number on the scale, or how, like we were talking about before, how much weight they can push around. But there are different ways in which you can progress, right? Even the way that you think about your training, as we mentioned just now, is a progression. So what are some things that you start with, or some things that you discuss when you're having these conversations with your clientele?
About 2 years ago, we went overboard. So we started delivering a questionnaire that was huge, like a huge amount of information before I ever did an initial session with somebody remotely or in person. And initially we're like, man, this thing is huge. This will probably take like 2 hours for somebody to fill out. Like, we want to know your fucking dog's name. We want to know what your perfect day looks like. All this stuff that has nothing to do with training, but we want to get into the weeds on people and want to know their why. What's their mechanism of change? What do they think a good achievement may look like? And that was one of the best things that we ever did. It really amplified the amount of time that it takes to bring in a new client. We don't bring in a whole lot of new clients because we have such high retention, both in person and online. But that time spent getting to know your client at a deeper level, not just about their weight on a scale, not about their height and their date of birth. You don't want to know, hey, how much you squat, bro? Like, I could give a fuck. What I want to know about is what makes somebody tick. Because if we can't get into the why behind somebody's initiation of coming in and paying us money for our services, then most likely they're not going to get the most out of it. And we're not going to be able to change and impact that life as deeply as we want to as coaches. And that is something that has been a game changer for us, because you're at a deeper emotional level from a trust and a relationship standpoint before you even meet the person. And I think that, connecting on things that seem very superficial, but actually make humans the people that come together and create synergy upon a relationship, that's something that really pushes most people forward in the coaching space if they can do it at a world-class level. I honestly don't think that we're in need of more X's and O's. We need to know the difference between 93% on the bar and 95%. Like, nobody cares.
Yeah.
What we need to know about is how to talk to human beings, how to manage their behavior change or their journey of behavior change, and then how to create programming, how to create dynamic relationships in the coaching process that actually elicits a positive result over a longer period of time. Kind of nipping in the butt the thought of, oh, I have 12 weeks here, let's gain 20 pounds of muscle. Hey, let's lose 20 pounds of fat. Hey, let's get a big fat ass after 12 weeks. That's not the goal for us. Short-term goals for my clients, we're going to achieve them, but it's not going to be the goal. The goal is to try to redistribute the energy of your lifestyle and try to live a better life via what you're doing in the gym. Short-term goals will be achieved, but they're not the goal in the real time. The goal in the real time is to achieve physical autonomy, to redefine your health, and to gain true longevity. And longevity means that you not only live longer, you live a higher quality of life. You're that 75-year-old dude in the gym that everyone's like, damn, that guy is in shape. I don't know anything about fitness, but that guy is in shape. And feeling and functioning well, that's the long-term goal. And the quicker the people can get to that, the better.
What you said is so spot on, because as for these coaches listening, and even these the clients, I think it's so important to always remind coaches and young coaches that without the connection, there is no training. So what you just said about learning about your lead and learning about your client to the point that you created this whole questionnaire where it's not even about the fitness goals, the numbers of this. It's about, their dog's name, who they are, what they like to do. It's so crucial. And me and Josh talk about this all the time, because you see that a lot of these coaches come into it and they skip that whole part, and they just like, all right, fitness program, how much money to sell them on, this and that. And then we forget about the communication and the actual relationship building, that it's like, guys, you can't even get to this if you don't have this, and at the end of the day, they're buying into you because of that part, so we can all know how to coach and train, but if you don't know how to communicate and get to know them as regular human beings, like having a convo with your friend, and showing interest in them, then we can't solve these people's problems. So I love that you mentioned that, because this is going to really help a lot of coaches out there listening to this.
I think there's a lot to be said with weighing the theoretical benefits versus the reality of the situation or the environment. A lot of people come in and they hire personal trainers, they'll hire an online coach, and they'll have this theoretical benefit that they're going to get. Hey, I want to lose 20 pounds. Hey, I want to be bikini ready. It's all of these very superficial goals. And they think the only way is this constructed way that they have in their mind. Hey, I got to squat heavy 4 times a week if I'm going to squat more weight. Hey, I need to not eat and do 15 hours of cardio a week if I have to lose fat. So they think that they have this roadmap, and they just want you to be there and go like this. Yeah, that's the way. But sometimes you don't even know what they want unless they say it in an indirect way. One really good example is I have this awesome client down in South Florida. She is a trainer herself on TV, awesome expert in the field. And number one goal is like to get strong and resilient and, bulletproof the body. Okay, cool. So what does that sound like if it's a theoretical thing? Oh, we're going to lift heavy. We're going to make sure that, you get strong and all this stuff. But then deep down in the questionnaire, it was like, what does your perfect day look like? It's like, hey, I wake up, I drink coffee, I walk my dog in the morning. After I get warm, I go for a run because it really clears my mind. And I'm like, whoa, hold on a second. I wasn't planning on having you do 2 runs a week. But now that you said that, let's dive deep in on this. Hey, how long have you been running for? What's the feeling? What's the benefit that you get out of running, knowing very well that resiliency is the theoretical goal? Well, it really helps me mentally. It helps me mentally really disengage from the world for an hour. And it helps me bring down my stress. And I've really been dealing with a lot of stress lately. I depend on running to feel good and to be mentally my best. So all of a sudden, that negates the theoretical benefits of, I just need to get strong and build a resilient body. Well, hold on a second. You can't build a resilient body unless your mind is right up here. So all these little things, it's like if you can take these tiny little nuggets out of some of these silly questions, honestly, they are kind of silly, then you can construct something that not only gives people what they theoretically think that they want on paper, but also the things that make them tick to make sure that they create consistency, sustainability, and they are the best version of themselves. But this is information that never gets passed along, very rarely in person and almost never in an online setting. You never know those little things behind people's whys. And that's the reason to dive deep in. It's about relationships, not only about results, but if you can do both of those things, that's what builds reputation.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to what you were saying about retention, right? Like you don't have to go out and find a ton of new clientele because you are able to keep the clients that you do have. And a big part of that is actually listening to what they want to say. And I think too often, and I find myself doing it at times, is like, already coming to my own conclusion based off of, like you said, the theoretical thoughts that, I read in a textbook or I learned from certifications like your own, where I'm like, okay, well, Dr. Rusin said this in the PPCS. So, this is the way it's got to go, when really I might have missed that whole part where they're like, I need that run to clear my head. And you're like, well, fuck that. Right. Like, we're going to be deadlifting, 5x5 and squatting heavy. And we're going to be making sure that you're getting in some quality rows. And you're like completely went over your head. The fact that, like, if they don't get that intention right, with that run every couple of days, then, everything else they're going to do in the gym is going to be shit.
Yeah, retention is a really interesting thing right now because basically every personal trainer and coach out there lost their entire client list. Whether you're in person, of course, if the gym is not open, you basically are down to square one. And then online, too, it's like people aren't dealing with a whole lot of extra cash. Yeah. And fitness, whether we like it or not right now, hiring a coach is a luxury item. So a lot of people are struggling on the online side of things as well. But one thing that has helped me in terms of the retention, but also in terms of getting the right kind of clients, is that, over the last 8 years, we have over 1,200 free articles out there on literally every single subject that would be part of my training philosophy or system. We have 3 mega sale programs out there that have been used by almost 100,000 people at this point in time. I provide huge amounts of content for free on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, every single social media network. So at this point, there's not a lot of unknown with me. It's like, what you're getting, what the training philosophy is, what our mission and our tenets are. So when people classify themselves as maybe coming in and working with me, whether it be coming to a PPSC course, hiring me as an online coach, or coming in and starting to do more things on the mentoring side of things, there's not a whole lot of unknown. And that could be a really, really good thing, or it could be a bad thing. But I think that if you put yourself out there, if you're authentic to your own expertise, your own experiences, and you can communicate those things on a consistent basis, then all of a sudden you're going to be bringing in clientele that are very comfortable with you right off the bat because it's already a previous relationship that you had. And I think that is what dives deep into really, really impacting somebody's life, whether it be a client or a fellow coach, is that you don't just go an inch deep and a mile wide. You really can just dig down into these different training systems and philosophies because all of that stuff is there. And almost coming into a certification course or hiring me on a one-on-one setting, it's something that is the logical next step because, hey, this is where I need to go to get even more out of it. And, over the last 4 years, I've read 700 articles. They've all been awesome. So retention on that side of things, it goes to show that if you are who you are, if you are who they thought you were, that is a good thing. You don't want to be fooling anyone into coming in and working with you.
So, John, like you keep saying, all these stuff is amazing. And, I'm here thinking like, man, you yourself doing all this, what kind of system do you have in place to be able to replicate that quality with your coaches? Like, I would love to know that because I know there's a lot of coaches out there would love to be able to consistently replicate everything you've said and implement that with their coaches and make sure they're consistent with that. How do you do that?
It's a work in progress and it's a constant evolution. And it is probably the hardest thing that I've ever done is trying to scale my systems and my coaching models so other experts in the field can communicate them out in 16-hour certification courses or in dynamic offerings online. And we work extremely hard. We put a lot of finances and energy into trying to bring consistency and scalability into our system, specifically with pain-free performance specialist certification. The certification is only 19 months old right now. We've certified over 3,000 coaches across the globe in 42 different countries. Wow. So the thing is growing very fast, but up until about 12 months ago, it was basically a one-man show. I was just doing everything. I was doing the travel. I was doing the marketing. I was doing the teaching. I was literally like on the brink of absolute physical and mental destruction. But then, getting it to the point of, oh man, maybe this can be bigger than just myself. We hired Nick Clayton over from the National Strength and Conditioning Association as our Chief Operations Officer. 6 months later, we hired Clifton Harsky as our Director of Performance and Education. And he was at Fitwall for about 8 years before that, running 4,000 clients at a time in 3 different states out of his group training platform. And then all of a sudden you have this like dream team around you. And then, only then, you can truly go in and start scaling. So over the last 9 months, since getting this executive team in place, we have brought in, the best of the best in terms of world-class presenters in the fitness industry. People that not only can speak and hold attention in a room for 16 hours, which is a skill in itself, but also people that have been running our systems for years and years and have seen the success and have the experience with them. And then, honestly, it's about a 6-month process to get somebody to the point where they can have a repeatable, scalable, dynamic delivery for the pain-free performance specialist certification. All that stuff was all good until COVID hit, because it kind of derailed some of the ways that we are bringing in our coaches, continuing to educate our coaches internally. But we actually moved a lot of our team resources online. And that has been a very dynamic way to stay connected with people from across the globe, across the country, all with the same mission of bringing pain-free performance really anywhere where we go and run a course. So really, Cliff and Nick have done an extraordinary job of bringing this system, making it better, but also continuing to educate our team at a world-class level to the point where we have experts that are far smarter than I am. They're far better presenters than I am, and they have taken this thing to an absolute new level. And post-COVID, we were back 2 weekends ago, and we ran our first course, and we have 35 courses scheduled in the next 10 weeks. So as long as everything stays open, as long as everything stays safe for our attendees, we have a big year coming.
I think you're downplaying your own abilities a little bit, man. Having taken the first iteration of PPCS,
yeah, before it was even the third.
Yeah, I was very impressed. I think from start to finish, you were able to really break things down. I mean, from my point of view, having a master's degree in exercise science, when you walk into that room, a lot of times you're not with the same education level as you're not at the same education level as a lot of the people in the search. Some people are just taking it as, a general population person trying to learn more about their own body. You have entry-level trainers, mid-level trainers, and then, people like us who have the advanced degrees, right? So having taken it and experienced it from that and been able to see how you can really break it down to the person who understands very little about their own body or about exercise science while still keeping it relatable and engaging for people like myself. That was remarkable to see. I know I learned a lot about presenting even from you just by watching you in person, man. So, kudos to you for that.
Kudos to you for sitting through 16 hours of me literally just talking. I can't believe that I did this for like 3 years. So for 3 years, I literally just lectured for 8 hours. And I was like, all right, you guys, come back tomorrow. I'm going to do the same fucking thing again and lecture on some different shit. And it wasn't ideal by any means, not for the attendees, not for me, but I think there was something to it. Like you're saying, Josh, it was like, it connected, it brought the high science down to applicability and action points. And that was the beauty of the system. And then fine tuning that to the point where now we have dynamic breakouts. We're only lecturing for about 20 to 25 minutes at a time. And then we have a 45-minute breakout, practical demonstrations. We have hands-on, and we can really lock in that information and take action upon the system, as opposed to the mental masturbation. I'm all for mental masturbation, but I can do it in the privacy of my own home. You don't need to be at a certification course to do that shit.
For sure.
So there is a certain demographic that we are currently teaching to, because the market has proved that is who's coming into the certification course. And they're personal trainers and they're strength coaches that work predominantly with other human beings in person. We do have online coaches come through. We have chiropractors and physical therapists. We have a number of physicians that come through, which is totally awesome. But the thing that the people with the high education levels get out of it is they're like, oh, wow, This took everything that I know, but it just made it way more simple and systemized to the point where I can scale it to whoever I'm working with. And that was the best compliment that we ever got, because we do have a lot of diversity. When you're running a movement systems course, everyone has to move, and movement is our median and our connection point for other human beings. So all of a sudden, it's like, man, we're having a lot of diversity of our attendants, but a vast majority are ones that want to instantly adopt a system in order to do two different things. Optimize performance, aka get better results with your client. Duh, that's what they're there for. But also mitigate the risk of injuries, not only inside of the gym during those training sessions, but out in the real world as well. Because every coach should be able to not hurt their client. That's a given. But how are you making them resilient when they leave you? How are you making them resilient in beer league softball, or at the park with your son going down the slide and like saving him from falling in a mud puddle? How are you doing real life things and being able to not suffer physical consequences of your inability to move or function? And I think that once we get those results with people, that's a dynamic offering that you want to pay forward to almost every single client that you have. But yeah, the course has come a long, long way. And we're almost like in like the fourth iteration of it at this point in time. But something that I'm proud of. It's something that I use with my own training. It's something that I use in my own education. When I stop evolving, when I stop trying to continue to get better, I'll go sell real estate or something. Or I'll move down to South Florida with you guys. Like
anytime, man. Anytime.
Done in the industry.
There's more than enough room for the Rusin family down here. No, but I mean, like you said, like making it so that you can regurgitate the information to anyone is super important, and even with, your style of training, it really seems like, and I've worked with one of your clients, David Rochefort. He's a former colleague of mine. When I would do
cyborg,
he's a robot. He's an absolute robot. We've been saying this for years. We don't think he's real. We think he eats motor oil and turns off to fall asleep. But, like going through some of the workouts with him, it seemed like most of it was like super bread and butter, like foundational movements going with the intensity jacked through the roof, right? Which is super important. Yep. And a lot of variability in the warm-up protocol, not in terms of like how the actual setup of it, but in terms of what you're able to do on a day-to-day basis, and also with the cool downs that you do, And I think that too many people have lost the understanding that, you don't have to get like not everything has to look cool on Instagram, the bulk of your training should be sweet and simple, and the variety should come in the things that are going to get you better at those foundational movements that you preach so much about.
Yeah, the beauty is not in variation. The beauty is in slight variation, because slight variation yields the results, not only mechanically, but also neurologically. So when we look at different training systems, they're usually pretty fucking dogmatic. It's like, hey, we're going to get strong. We're going to only do barbell training between 1 and 5 reps, no matter what. Oh, you want to build metabolic capacity? Okay, we're only going to run and do the ski erg, and we're going to do the airdyne bike because that's what I have to do. You don't have to do anything. What people should be doing is trying to build up all of their physical disciplines, all of their physical characteristics simultaneously. Because that's what life throws at you, without sounding like CrossFit, because that's not what we do. What we try to do is a little bit of everything in every single training session. I want your 6-phase dynamic warm-up sequence to truly feel like you just went through a high-end physical therapy session, to the point where you're feeling fucking great after you get out of there. Like, oh my God, this guy's got magic hands, without having those hands on your body, having it be self-sufficient for you. By the time you get into that first movement, I want you to feel like a performance athlete. I want you to be generating power, working explosively. That is something that is so lost in our fitness industry today. Oh, I'm over 30. I shouldn't be doing explosive lifts or movements. Well, what the hell happens when you have to catch yourself from falling? What the hell happens when you have to be an athlete, or you have to rotate? You have to do all these things that are inherently natural to the human movement system. That is a big one with the power primers that we use. And then, of course, this is something that I've gained a reputation for. We go ham on functional strength. Functional strength is a relative term. It's an ambiguous term, but it's something that is truly building a huge amount of capacity across variation. So if we do a squat, hinge, lunge, push, pull, carry, there's one derivative that's going to be challenged every single week. That wants you to push that weight hard with perfect form. Whether it be 1 rep, whether it be 5 reps, whether it be 7 reps, whatever it may be, the goal is heavy loading at that point in time through different types of movement environments and scenarios. And then from there, it's like, I want people to chase a pump. I want people to feel, the burn of metabolic stress. I want them to do some conditioning. I want them to breathe and feel like they're in the last 3 minutes of a yoga session. And I want them to be able to feel good leaving that session. And this is what we call P4. So the P4 is prepare, prime, perform, and pump. So if you can get all 4 of those P's into a training session, that is a true multimodalic session. And that's a well-rounded approach to health, wellness, and longevity. That's something that I currently use with myself. That's something that I use with a good share of my one-on-one training clients. And it works. And the craziest thing is that you see the PR still, even though you're not peaking for them. The craziest thing is that you get bigger, even though that is not the goal of hypertrophy. Oh, you get more metabolic conditioning. You're more conditioned than ever before. It naturally happens. But instead of going like this on one physical characteristic and having the rest fall to the ground and lose all that capacity, they all move up together. And I think that is what creates great retention for us. It creates great results for us, but it also really gets people into the mindset of feeling good and also getting the result. It's not one or the other.
That is so key, man, because I feel like there's so many people out there still, like, me and Josh have seen it where you get people come in and they want to train, and a lot of time you see they hang out only in this one spectrum of training, and they're scared to enter these other areas because that's all they know, or that's what they used to do, or they played a sport back then and that's all they knew from their sport, training this way. And then when they get introduced to these other ones, you see themselves, they're challenged. And, sometimes like, oh, this is the best, and it's just like, it's cool to see when that awakening starts happening. And I wanted to ask you, like, for those type of people, when they come in thinking one way of training, what is your best approach to snap them out and make them also realize like the importance of this? Because I think that's also important. A lot of coaches out there struggle to also communicate with their client and show them why it's important to train in all these different fashions and introduce you into other training modalities, not just the one you're stuck at. Not saying it's saying it's wrong to be where you're at, but how can you also introduce these new ways to be able to create that longevity in your life? Like, what is your approach on that, on those clients?
I'm pretty fortunate that people kind of have bought into a non-dogmatic approach to health, fitness, and training. That's what we're known for. That's most likely why they're there in the first place. But it hasn't always been that way. And I think that people, they hold a certain physical characteristic above all else. Usually it's either going to be strength or it's going to be hypertrophy. Or on the opposite end of the spectrum, hey, fat loss at all costs. I want to be super, super lean. But you have to give somebody what they're there for, or they're going to just leave and get it from somebody else. The key is, how do you amplify their results and what they're focused on by maybe sprinkling in some other things that will definitely make them a more well-rounded human being? Because the biggest risk out there is that people either get hurt or they just go so balls to the wall that they end up burning out neurologically or mechanically to the point where they can't train. Injuries and burnout lead to them sitting on the couch and watching fucking Tiger King on Netflix and not training with you. That is not a good scenario. But I think that you have to transition them slowly. If you're coming off of 5-3-1, we have a lot of clients come into functional power training off of 5-3-1. And they're having like a panic attack reading functional power training for the first time. They're like, holy shit, we're going to put bands on the barbell. Whole fuck. And they have a panic attack. Like, hey man, it's all right. It's all right. We're going to be cycling these lifts. We're not just doing one barbell lift for the entirety of our whole life. No. We're going to cycle in slight variation. Yeah. And you know what? If you buy into this process, boom, you're going to be able to get the result that you're after. But that being said, the biggest thing that you can do for somebody to buy in, make them feel good. Yeah. Build a relationship with them and have them trust you. That is number one. But having somebody exit the gym feeling like they just accomplished something, but also feeling like the best versions of themselves. There's no sales strategy behind that. That is something that every great personal trainer that does a lot of business, I'm thinking about our man David.
Yeah.
He knows that very, very well.
Yes,
There's a reason that you have 14 hours a day, 7 days a week over at Equinox South Beach.
He's absurd.
Because you make somebody feel like Superman.
Yeah.
You make them feel accomplished, and you also get them the results. But you can get somebody a result. You can leave them absolutely trashed where they can't live the rest of their lives for 2 to 4 days. That's another side of the thing. But I think that if you can bring in experience, entertainment, education, and results, that is going to be really a dynamic offering to get somebody's buy-in. And once you have their buy-in, then you can start to push in a little bit more of the intelligence as opposed to the dogma.
Yeah, a little bit of what they want with a lot of what they need, right? Like you said, the last part of it, right? The last P of P4, you know, getting that pump. Everyone in Miami wants to get the pump, and no one wants to do anything else. So, all right, if you want to do some bicep curls, I'm gonna crush your biceps, you know, so that you can get the pump that you want. But in order to do that, we got to hit some deadlifts. We got to do some rows. We're gonna have to do, you know, some mobility work beforehand. We're gonna have to do some conditioning, and then you can do your curls at the end, you know?
People aren't complicated the way that they think about things. They're actually very, very simple. From an experiential perspective, people are focused on 2 things. They're focused on the peak of the experience during a training session, whatever the fuck was maybe your key performance indicator, what was the heaviest thing, what was the toughest thing. And then the second thing that they're focused on is the last thing that they do. So you could have a total bullshit session for 45 minutes, and then that last 5 minutes of a 15-minute session, you can give them exactly what they want. And they're like, oh, man, Josh is just the best. He knows me. He feels me. He understands me. He gave me exactly the feeling that I was after. It's like, well, no, we just did a bunch of shit that you needed to do.
Yeah.
But, oh, man, the last thing that you thought about was the finisher. That's why finishers are so sexy.
Yeah.
Because people can work hard for 2 to 5 minutes, and they can feel accomplished and be like, yes, I got sweaty. I got really, really tired.
Yeah.
And it didn't negate any of their benefits because they weren't doing it for 45 minutes. There's a lot of psychology to that. The peak of the experience, and then the last thing that you do. Those should be the 2 focuses of building relationships in the gym.
Yeah, I mean, the relationship aspect, you know, I think now more than ever with coaches like you, with Coach Brett B, you know, there's a lot more dialogue on the actual emotional side of training and how that actually goes into people's buy-in and their ability to stay with you long-term and be able to consistently hit these goals. Whereas, you know, when we were coming into the field, it was just, you know, hit the weights, timer, blow the whistle, you know, especially in athletics. Like when I was coming up, there was never like any like, hey, you should maybe go talk to the athlete and like see what's going on with their day before the session. It was just like, come in here, I'm gonna blow the whistle. You know, you're gonna do what I say and then you're gonna leave. But as you know, time went on, and especially now, I realize more than ever that, you know, if I don't spend the time to kind of see how they feel before and after the session mentally, you know, then I can't do my job within the session, getting them to train right. So, you know, that the relationship aspect of it, I think, thank God, it's kind of becoming more of the forefront in our industry, with the actual training part just becoming the bread and butter side of things.
Yeah, you know, a key thing that we focus on in the Pain-Free Performance Specialist certification is that every single module throughout day 1 and day 2, I want to have a sense of empowerment for our coaches. I want them to feel accomplished. I want them to feel proud of being a personal trainer. And I want them to be able to bring that energy back to their clientele. You know, I'm not telling somebody that they're fucking broken. They need to do foam rolling for 6 hours a day to get better. Not somebody to go, oh, you need me. You need to depend on me to get a result. I want people to feel empowered through physical training. And that is a powerful thing, because not a whole lot of people are talking about that. We're talking about the opposite sides of the spectrum, about everything being programming, or, you know, you playing psychologist on the training floor and never actually training that day, which is most likely out of scope of practice. But what if you could make somebody feel like the best versions of themselves? You could empower their life. That is what we're trying to do for our coaches, and then pay it forward to their clients. And when we figured that out, that training is more than the X's or those, it's more than hypertrophy and strength benefits. When we figured that out, things got really, really good for our clarity of what our core messaging was.
I mean, without people like you in the industry, man, I don't necessarily know where we would be. You know, I mean, I'm being honest though. You know, like you spent a long time, you know, and you've made a lot of sacrifices in order to be able to help, you know, people like Anthony and me be able to accelerate our own careers and learn from the mistakes that you've made in the past, and be able to be better coaches and be able to be better individuals even, you know, so that we can help our colleagues and help the future trainers come as you have with us. So, you know, I really do want to say thank you for that. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. And, you know, you think about what gets you up in the morning. Like you pop up and you're like, man, I got some shit to do. And it's not training for me anymore. Hey, I'm going to go deadlift 500 pounds. It's not for me anymore. What it is how are we going to actually make a change, not only in the gym, not only in the fitness industry, how are we going to change health in our society today? COVID, man, there's some serious stuff. There's some serious data coming out looking at the risk factors of obesity, the risk factors of type 2 diabetes, the risk factors of high blood pressure, the risk factors of all these comorbidities. Man, who is going to be the profession that steps up and helps this with a proactive approach? It's not going to be physicians.
Yeah.
Most likely not going to be rehab pros. Who the fuck else is going to help society's health and wellness? Oh, fitness, personal training, strength coaching, movement, proactive approaches to prevention. That's what our profession is going to be all about. I mean, this stuff gets me fired the fuck up, if you can't already tell.
Yeah.
But it's like, I wake up every morning knowing very well that if we can impact one coach, if we can impact 10 coaches, 120 coaches in a city like New York City before COVID, when we run our certification courses, that's how we do this grassroots approach to building change into our society, making society healthier and more resilient mentally, emotionally, physically, psychologically, and actually starting to reverse this. Because our American culture, we're struggling right now.
It's not
we're
great.
struggling with health.
Yeah.
We're also struggling with health up here.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys know as well as I do, a big change is going to be exercise. Exercise leading to training, and training leading to living a lifestyle that actually benefits from what we do physically. You know, we got to do something, because I've been all around the world the last number of years. We're not doing very well in America here. Right in our backyard, we are struggling the most. Maybe out of all the countries I've been to, we are struggling the most right here. And maybe out of this country, the Midwest where I live needs more help than anyone. So, you know, that's the thing, that at the end of a career, when I'm all gone and I'm in the fucking grave, hey, what was a legacy for John? I don't even want it to be about John. I want it to be about, well, we are actually a healthier society because of maybe keeping people feeling good, teaching people that there's an alternate way to killing yourself or doing nothing, that this is a normal part of being a human being, is to move your body and eat well and being able to be strong and resilient. Man, that's we're far way away right now, but we have to chip away at it.
Yeah, I completely agree, man. I think we are a very long way away, but these types of conversations, right? And I think that they are happening a lot more with COVID going on, maybe not in the mainstream, but definitely within our industry and with our clients. And eventually, hopefully that does trickle down to the mainstream media, and they start to really realize that, you know, popping a pill is not going to help your problems. Like, you know, having gastric bypass surgery does not solve your problems, you know.
I've been thinking about this a lot. I sit in my office in my house, and I see, especially during lockdown, there's a lot of families out there walking. There's some overweight people. There's some obese people. There are some people that need to probably gain some weight. But a lot of people started like walking. I don't constitute walking as training. It's exercise.
Yeah.
But okay, I was thinking about this really a lot yesterday, because I kept on seeing them go by and go by. And I thought, exercise is step one, right? Exercise, moving your body, just moving, not biasing. Oh, you need to squat, hinge, and lunge, and push, pull, and carry. No, just move. That's step one. It's almost an entry point. So I think COVID got a lot of people to exercise and maybe just move, even if it is walking outside because people want to get the fuck out of their houses and away from their kids for a half hour. That is an entry point. That is a gateway activity to maybe being mentally and psychologically ready to invest in behavior change, which may be training. And so many times in our industry, it's like, oh, people need to be doing more than walking. They should just give up if walking is all they're doing. No, we need to take them from that entry point. We need to bring them through that gateway and show them that, hey, yes, you have qualified yourself to maybe take this up another step. Maybe start going in and doing things a little bit more mindfully. Maybe building your human movement system up. But looking at it as a negative that people are out there walking instead of training at home in their fucking living rooms, not everyone's ready for that. But I think the biggest opportunity, if we still have a fitness industry after all these gym closures and the COVID spikes, is that we have a lot of people that are going to be ready for behavior change moving into the professional space in the fitness industry. Hopefully we have enough fitness professionals to service these people, because if not, then what I just talked about, that legacy of trying to help better the health of society, it's going to be really hard to do that without leaders in the positions that personal trainers and coaches are in.
And I think it's key that we, like Josh said, we have these conversations, and more coaches are coming out and saying that important part of what you're saying, where the true health issues that lie in that are scary in this time of COVID, of obesity, diabetes, heart disease, all this stuff that is only going to make it worse for an individual by getting COVID. And me and Josh had talked about this, at the beginning when we started our first podcast, and seeing how our country, is very, 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 on the back end of stuff, like you're saying, compared to other places you've been to. And it's scary because, like you said, that's the main issue, and it's not about putting a Band-Aid on, but it's more about solving that solution and working towards that. And I really loved how you said, people walking and starting that point of exercise, but then realizing that there has to be a turning point of let's bump things up and let's start training. And I think it's so amazing, because I think the more we will hear this from coaches, I think it's just going to inspire more people, more listeners to actually start waking up and realizing the true problem that is going on, and how we can prevent, the not spread, but the actual people getting the COVID disease and hitting them harder than other people, because I think that's the point. It's you're seeing the people who are suffering with obesity, who have respiratory issues, who have heart disease. They're the ones getting hit the hardest, and they're the ones that end up passing away. And you're seeing the numbers. You haven't heard too many things on articles or news, or hey, this personal trainer or coach got COVID and passed away. Or this, so I think it's important to see, that as a person and truly see where the main issue is. And I love that. And I appreciate you saying that and inspiring a lot of people today.
What if the narrative was different for us? What if the narrative in the mainstream media was a little bit more health-based? What if we were actually talking about, hey guys, you're going to be in this house for the next 3 months. Here's some best practices for sound nutrition. Here's maybe the ill effects of increasing your alcohol intake 75% these next 3 months. Here's what getting outside and getting a little bit of sunshine does for you. Here's what a little bit of cardiovascular exercise, even if it is walking, here's the benefits of that. And oh, by the way, you have 3 to 4 months to do this, to actually prepare yourself to re-enter the space if you do choose to do so back into society upon reopening. People could have lost 40 pounds as opposed to gain 40 pounds.
Yep.
People could have taken their blood pressure and went from way up here to way back down here into normal rates. People could get off of their polypharmacy and their co-medications, putting themselves in a stronger and more resilient position to, again, most likely get back to work and return into society. But that's not what we did. And I know it's hard, and I'm not being judgmental on anyone who did not choose to do these things. But I said choice. Choose, choice. Everyone has one. And I think that people need to be ready for change. But if this isn't going to wake people up, I honestly don't know what it is. So hopefully we can use this as a starting point really mainstream the idea that being healthy will keep you healthy.
I think you're dead on with that, man. And I think that that's a perfect message to end with. You know, I think everyone has the choice, and everyone needs to really think about what's important in their life before they make the choices that they make.
Absolutely.
You want to tell people where they can find you at? Not that it's hard to find you. You have a ton of stuff out there, but we'll throw it on there anyway.
Yeah, drjohnrusin.com. It's our main hub. All the content's over there, programs, certification courses, Instagram, Facebook, Dr. John Rusin. Follow along. And I appreciate you guys having me. Thank you so much.
We appreciate you, man. Thank you so much.
John, truly appreciate it. Thank you.
You got it, man.